Hello, everybody, and welcome to the HouseAtWork.com Home Repair Clinic podcast. Jim Salmon here, along with
Peter Schick.
How are you today?
Doing good.
Another
day.
We were going to talk about, we've dabbled in it a little bit about rental property and the landlord business. Everybody in America wants to be a landlord. Oh, instant millionaires.
Yeah, everybody says that, but there's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that. There's a lot more that goes into being a landlord, buying rental properties, some of the considerations you have to take. I've had some as well. I don't know about you, Jim.
I have one rental property right now. I have divorced myself of that whole business, but I have one. And, okay, the tenant's been there forever, and they pay.
Yeah, why not? Exactly.
And I did all the modernizations years ago, so I'm good. I make money on it. But it's not for everybody.
No, it's not.
I do, as a home inspector, I do a lot of inspections on doubles, triples, four families, big apartment.
Big commercial complexes, yeah.
And even like a double, people don't realize the minute they buy that house that has a tenant in it, they're responsible for 100 things. The locks on the door, for instance.
Yep.
When a house changes hands,
You got to change the locks.
you change the locks. If you don't, you don't know who has keys.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a no-brainer. If somebody breaks into somebody's house, the day of closing, you now own it. You go to, they're suing you for $5,000 for their stuff is gone. And you get into court, and the first thing the judge says is, well, where did you have control of the keys? Well, no, I was going to get to it. Done. You're guilty.
Yep. Boom.
So and the same thing goes for safety issues.
Yep.
How many times every year do you see a video of a house fire where they're going through and the smoke alarm's hanging by the
they don't check the fire alarms or the smoke alarms, or even something as simple as people slipping on the sidewalk or on the stairway or anything like that. You can be held liable. Not trying to scare anybody from it, but just realizing there's risks associated.
No, we're just trying to lower the price of property so we can buy them.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things, too, that I tell all my clients buying rental property is that, well, first of all, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and there should be a fire extinguisher mounted to the wall in every kitchen.
Yep. I provide that for each one of the units. Is they have a fire extinguisher. I say, hey, keep this in the kitchen here. I should have a wall mount for it, but typically when I'll come and visit them every now and then, I'll see it in there. And so they're usually pretty good with it.
I love it when I'm going through and inspecting a building that's a rental property. My client buying it is there. And typically sometimes the person that's selling, not the real estate agent, but the guy that actually owns it now, that's selling it is there too. And you walk into a house where the utilities are half separated. The people pay for the gas.
They're paying for somebody else's unit.
They pay for gas heat for their furnace, but the electrical isn't separated, so it's electrical for the whole building.
So
the landlord pays electrical.
So I've seen it where you have, say it's a duplex, and then you have the electric separated, quote unquote, but you'll have one of the units have electric that has like plugs that is attached to the other unit.
The other side. It's shared metering is what and that can be an expensive proposition.
Yes, it can.
To change, or if somebody discovers it, how do you litigate who owes who what?
Yeah, exactly.
But the one that I love the most is the gas is separated. So say it's a double. There's 2 gas furnaces, 2 gas meters. So everybody pays their own, but there's one electric service for the house. So and the landlord pays the electric as part of the rent. So I go in there, and on one side, there's 5 electric wall heaters plugged in.
No. And the window's open. Yeah. I mean, you're setting yourself up as a landlord to just get screwed over if you are the one who's paying the electric or even sometimes the heat. Like, let me turn up the heat all the way to 80 in the middle of the winter and then leave the windows open and everything else. So
people when they're not responsible for the buck,
they don't care.
Give a rat's rear end.
Yeah, they don't care. They will just totally, you're paying for it, so they could care less as far as they're concerned.
The other thing with being a landlord, do you allow pets or don't you?
That's actually an interesting question, because I've had it where I've allowed pets, and there's been times where it hasn't been an issue, and then there's been times where I really, really, really regretted it. And it's kind of a case-by-case basis. And the reason it's case by case. Usually I meet, it's really how I feel about the tenant, like what the price point is for the apartment. Like if there's somebody who seems responsible, who has a good job, who it's not a puppy, that's a big thing. Like it's a puppy or a small like young animal or kitten or something. And guess what? It's gonna learn how to get housebroken in your place, and that's gonna cause issues.
You don't want that. Well, yeah. if an apartment has hardwood floors or something, it's easier to maintain.
Yeah, it's much easier.
Carpeting,
Forget about
animals
it.
ruin carpet.
They destroy it
permanently.
My animals destroy my carpet. I mean, I have to replace some of my carpet because of them. But it's pretty case by case. Like if I get a good feel for it and I meet the animal, if I do accept it, I want to meet the animals kind of deal, because I don't want to make sure there's some vicious.
Right.
I'm letting some vicious dog or something stay in my house. I want to make sure it's personable and it's older and it's everything else. So
one of the real important things if you're getting in the landlord business is to be somewhat hands-on, to be visible there.
Yes.
It's the ones where people run into trouble, where the guy that lives in California that owns this building and they have property management companies.
Now, there's a lot I could talk about this all day, especially with these guys who have property management companies that are running their stuff. Is these property management companies are not really, they're incentivized for turnover in many ways. So like say I live in California, I have an apartment complex in, I don't know, Detroit or whatever. Most property management companies, they get paid to fill the unit, and then they get paid to evict a tenant, and then they're getting paid around between 8 to 10% of your gross, whatever you make on it. So if they just keep kicking out a tenant, putting in a new one, kicking out a tenant, putting in a new one.
They're making a fortune.
Oh, yeah, they're making money hand over fist, while the person who owns it, they're getting screwed. I see that all the time. I mean, it's like it is kind of a perverse incentive they have to have a lot of turnover, and that wears on the place, and that causes all sorts of other issues as well.
I've been in a couple of houses where a four-family particularly comes to mind, and so I'm over there doing the inspection. I go through 3 of the apartments, and I get to the 4th one, and there's police tape on the door.
Ah, jeez.
Meth lab. Former meth lab. Well,
Are you joking me?
No, I'm dead serious.
Like
I'm not going in there.
Meth lab.
This home inspection stops right here at that door. I'm not going in there.
Done.
I know. Well, first of all, I know nothing about drugs. I mean, give me drugs. I'm not into that. But it's. But the chemicals and things they use contaminate everything.
Oh yeah, that's done.
Contaminates the walls, the carpet.
That could contaminate the entire house. I mean, actually, from what I understand, that kind of puts it in a strange legal standing, the ownership of that house.
There are some states that the real estate folks are not even required to, even if they know about that stuff, they're not required to. But an ethical person would.
Exactly.
You wouldn't want to not tell somebody that.
I wonder what the court case that actually created that in some states where it requires you.
We live in interesting times.
Yeah. How did it get to that point?
Well, we live here in and around Rochester, New York, and the city of Rochester is anti-business. There's no question about it. Right down the middle.
Well, it's really high taxes is what it is.
Yeah.
The property taxes is incredible here. Monroe County, it's like 4%. It's 4%. 4%. I mean, that's almost unheard of anywhere else.
Within, I'll say, within a mile of this building we're in, there's got to be 50 zombie houses.
Oh yeah,
and
maybe even more.
And
maybe even more.
You don't have the incentive to buy them, to fix them up, to rent them, because the city comes down on you with a thumb like crazy. Then we have this thing here called the net office. Mm-hmm. And I look at that as nothing more than jackbooted thugs. I mean, they're nuts. Those people are crazy. And all they want to do is live out some dictatorship type of thing. I just want to choke them all.
Why don't you tell us how you really feel, Jim?
Drives me nuts.
Well, what gets me is we want to create. And this, we're getting into some of the local stuff. We'll move on quickly. I just want to state one point that I've noticed is they keep wanting to create more housing. It's like, hey, if you build it, they will come. If we make this really nice apartment, like really nice condos over here, it's going to make the neighborhood better. And it's not a housing shortage here. I think there's plenty of housing. I mean, it's just a matter of, it's an economic thing. It's a matter of bringing more jobs here, so then there is more demand for housing. I mean, that's one of the things I've seen, at least. I mean,
I'll, you know what? Right now, I'll leave that one alone.
Oh, we're going to go off on it. I want to hear. It's another one of those money-taking schemes that you were talking about.
I don't know about you, but I have a fair amount of pride in my house.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, I have
you got to. That's your castle, you know?
I have my wife mow the lawn frequently. You know. and I take pride in it. And when I come up on a house where clearly pigs live here, and it drives me nuts. And I get there to do a home inspection. There's dishes piled up to the ceiling.
It's even worse with multifamilies because, like we had alluded to earlier. I mean, somebody doesn't. It's not theirs. So what do I care? You know. And some of these people, it's so bad where. Okay, yeah, say I do keep the security deposit. I mean, that's not going to cover the damage a lot of the time that you'll see when somebody lives like that.
I come to a house and, you know, I mean, it looked like wallabies live there, and it's torn up. Everything's a mess. There's junk all over the place. And there's a sign at the front door that says, please remove your shoes. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm going to step on something.
You know, as a landlord, what I see happen all the time is, especially in the lower income rentals, is you know, people get in trouble a lot. And I go to court a lot and testify for people. And sometimes I have to sit through a whole bunch of landlord-tenant stuff downtown and you know, in municipal court. And it's like sometimes the system breaks down and people don't have money to pay and whatever. But they'll pull out every stop. You know, I can't afford my rent, but there's lead paint here and it's all friable. And I'm having my kid tested for lead and so that's going back.
See, the thing is that with the lead piece, it's the disclosure. You just have to let the tenants know a lot of the time. It's part of federal law where you give them that little pamphlet, like, hey, this is how you deal with lead. Like, if your house is built before 1978, it's 1978, yeah? Yeah, if it's built before then, there's a chance that there's lead. And you just have to have them sign that disclosure and give them the packet and be like, hey, look, there could be lead paint here, just FYI. Yeah. If we have any tests, here's the tests, but then that doesn't necessarily stop somebody from trying to twist
what they
your
do
arm,
is
like
if they get behind, sometimes they'll try to do anything they can to stave off the eviction deal. And so they'll call the net office and say, there's friable lead here. And it's, you know, it's the windowsills are all peeling or whatever. My kids are here, and I found my kid playing with a paint chip and whatever. The other thing is asbestos.
Yes.
And there's a ton of that out there,
I've seen
too.
That. You see that in wrapped around pipes and everything else. I've seen that in a bunch of the places I've been in.
So that's a tough one.
Well, that's really, I mean, as long as you can seal it, I think a lot of the time that's the big thing. It's not necessarily abatement of the asbestos. It's if you can, especially around pipes, if you just seal it, you get somebody to seal it.
There's paint, there's approved encapsulating tapes that you can use. They're clear. You know, we're not trying to hide it. It's here, but we've encapsulated it. That's fine. You know, one of the things, too, that drives me nuts is a lot of these buildings have old windows, single-strength glass windows from the 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s.
Oh, I've seen that I have one of mine that is still like that,
And they're all painted shut. Now, when I go into...
Well, they do that because of the certificate of occupancy, because a lot of the time the inspector's going to go in there and look for... That is where they look for the chipped paint.
No peeling paint.
Yeah. And so they're like, well, wait, maybe if I just paint it shut, they're not going to look in there. It's like, well, that doesn't really solve the problem, you know?
When I walk in a building, my main concern for all my clients is security. That's the number one thing.
Yeah, of course.
Safety and
safety
security.
That
so I'm
first.
thinking... there's a house fire in the kitchen. The only door to get out in that area of the house is the kitchen door, so you're not going that way. The house is on fire. It's full of smoke or whatever. You go over the windows. They're all painted shut. You can't get out any of them. So, you know, what I tell everybody is that I want to see that window open and operating. Now, I don't care if you go and buy a new vinyl replacement window. That's up to you if you want to do that. But that's got to be operating, and it's got to be able to get out the windows in an emergency.
And that's just people cutting corners from what I've seen. And to get, I know here in Rochester, to get that certificate of occupancy, you need to have the operating windows. That's not just your standard, that's also the city's standard.
Right.
And like I said, I think people just try to bypass, because it's a lot of work to scrape all that paint and then repaint it. And then, because you have to take apart the window to be able to do that a lot of the time.
Now, and you still have a window with an R value of 0.5.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
your cheapest vinyl replacement window starts at 3.0. So it's,
Yeah, you're losing heat on it,
Right.
and it's still it's an all around big issue. So people just say, I'm just going to paint it shut.
I think eventually the code will, and we're very close to this in New York State now, that sprinkler systems will be required for certain multifamily homes.
Like
So
what? How many units?
I don't know specifically on that, but I'll have the crack staff at the Home Repair Clinic get back to the wonderful staff at houseatwork.com.
Yeah.
And
I'll take a look. I'll do some research on
We'll
my end.
research that.
Yeah, because that's interesting. Because that adds, that's a whole other can of beans right there that you'd have to consider, especially for the larger units.
Many times I come to inspect a rental property for somebody, whether it's a double or triple or whatever it is, and the utilities aren't separated. And so it can be expensive to do electrical, and it can be expensive to do gas.
And that's going to make it harder to sell because now that's another liability that the landlord's going to have to put up with.
Right.
They're going to be covering that, and it's going to come from somewhere.
And the
you know?
building's for sale. The guy's had it for 20 years. He's milked it like a sow, and then he's done nothing to it. The fire escapes are all rusted and loose.
Yep.
The whole thing.
Seen that.
And my client isn't requiring the current owner to get the certificate of occupancy needed by the city at closing. And I'm looking at him and I'm going,
I don't
have
understand
you lost
that.
your mind?
I don't understand that. I have people who don't even do engineers inspections for like, hey, this is a 20-unit building. No
whatever.
engineers inspection. I just have to like do a face palm. Like, is this? I don't understand why.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I want to really ask. Whatever. No, I mean, it really confuses me because I can't even imagine myself throwing down like 7 figures for a place or more and not even doing an inspection. And whatever, different strokes, different folks. I mean,
And if you're buying it's normally accepted. If you're buying a building that, say, was built in the 50s, all right, just for the sake of a time frame. And now the first 20 years, the bathrooms and kitchens, we came up to 1970 and 70, 75, and they were remodeled. So now we're way into the 2000s, and they still have these 1970 kitchens and bathrooms in there.
Yep.
It's time to upgrade them.
Yep.
And if you're buying a building with 30 units in it, I mean, it could easily...
You're looking at 5 to 10 for each one of those
Right,
units.
exactly.
5
I
to
mean,
10
that's
grand.
a monumental amount of money to spend to upgrade these things. Now, you might be able to take the rent from, $800 to $1,200, and that's another whole matter.
Yep.
But still, it's like any other investment. You have to keep
you have
going.
you have to put a little back into it to get more. And one of the things that I've seen from working with clients or people who are interested in buying rental properties or income properties or whatever you want to call them is they say, well, I want it in a really nice neighborhood, but then I always want a really high cap rate. So a really high ROI, it makes, I want to see like a 10, 15% cap rate on that, which means it's going to make 10 to 15% of its value every year. And that just, you're not going to have it in a really nice
Very
area.
rare.
It's risk reward. It's that balance. I mean, if you want really high returns, you're going to take a lot of risk. If you don't want to take a lot of risk, you're not going to get very high returns. And I mean, that's a pretty fundamental thing that I always feel like I have to educate clients on. And they're like, oh, well, I want really high returns. I'm like, look, are you fine with being a slumlord? If you're fine with that, then, and if you're fine with taking on a lot of risk and somebody maybe tearing out all the copper piping in your duplex like one day, hey, I could show you a bunch of places.
There you go.
But I don't know if you really want to take that because, it's a bit deceptive, those high returns, because you're going to be spending a lot more in maintenance. You're going to be spending a lot more in turnover. You're going to be spending a lot of money on pretty much all those little ankle-biting issues that you're going to have if you own a place like that.
The one I like the best is the guy or gal buying their first rental property. And some are...
It's a trial by fire.
Exactly. Some are good. Some have done their homework. But my best advice to people like that is go downtown to your courthouse in the city and go into landlord-tenant court and just sit there for a day and watch what happens. You get a big-time education. It's very difficult to collect money sometimes. If somebody hasn't paid you They go back and plead with the judge. I mean, they could be there months.
Oh yeah.
And now they're just accumulating all this debt.
I could tell you a million different stories about nightmares with tenants. One of them was in our previous episode.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah, that one, and that just focuses, and that just what makes me want to bring up the point. You have to screen. All right, you have to check the credit. You have to check their income. Now, a way to check income, say if it's a 600, say it's like a one bedroom for like $600 a month. That individual should be making around $1,800 a month in take home income for them to qualify. Okay, so that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand. If they're spending over half their paycheck on their rent, chances are they're going to default on you.
Right. At some point, some emergency is going to happen.
Yeah,
or
something's going to
Yeah.
happen, and you know what? They're not going to prioritize you. They're going to prioritize whatever else they have going on in their lives. So no more than a third of their income should be going towards rent. And I'd say, and dependent on the kind of unit, the credit score piece can be flexible. I mean, if it's a really nice unit, I'd say above 650, 700. But if you're starting to look at something that's, I'm usually like, hey, above 600, I'll go for that. But there's no hard and fast rules. I've heard a bunch of people like, oh, I don't take over 700. But the thing is if you do have a really good credit score, why are you renting to begin with? You could buy your own house kind of deal. And so runs into some
people
other
don't
issues.
want the responsibility or they're short-termers in a certain area or something.
That's true. That's true.
There are, but you're right on that. Nightmare scenario, a landlord number 12 is you rent to somebody and then the next week there's like 6 people living there.
I've had that happen. And
That's a nightmare.
And well, the thing was, he was a former military guy, and
there's a trend there.
Well, actually, I'll say this: these guys are the bad apples.
Okay.
This is the one bad. The other guys were actually one was an active duty recruiter I rented to. He was amazing. I mean, he was paid on time, just completely very clean and everything. I had another active duty Navy guy, awesome, great dude. This guy, he retired. And he was from the Army, and then he lived with his girlfriend. And, I mean, next thing I know, like his cousin's living there. And his brother. And I'm like, hey, man, you just...
Yeah, you got to have a good lease.
You got to move on. It's like, I'm like,
yeah.
Look, your lease is expiring here really soon, so I don't feel like I'm going to renew you.
Yeah,
this just isn't working.
Well, I'll tell you can tax a building services, too, to a horrible level when you have so many people in a building like that, too. And it's not designed for that.
And the thing is you start seeing I start seeing these people moving in the last few months of their lease, and I'm like, okay, this is, I see where this is going. Yeah. I'm just gonna cut this off before it gets any worse here.
Well, I think that you cannot be squeamish as a landlord. You have to be. There's 2 types of people in the world. There's type A people and type B.
Yep.
And there's a few type AAA type people, which are ultra whatever. But a type B person, laid back, non-confrontational, whatever, doesn't make good landlord, in my opinion.
You're going to get stepped on.
You need to know what you're doing with this. And I'm not trying to talk anybody out of it because there's lots of good opportunities there. It's a business decision like anything else.
Yep.
But the city's against you, the tenants are against you, everybody's against you. Your insurance company's against you.
It's all about finding the right person. Yep. I find if I can actually get along with the person and they make good money and they have good credit, it's going to be fine most times. And what I've seen I have one of my places, it's the 2 tenants, they're very good tenants, but they don't get along with each other. And now I start getting...
That can be really bad.
Yeah, now I'm getting stuck in this stupid shouting match between these guys. It's like, you know what? Can you be adults? Can you just kind of work things out? It gets annoying.
One of the things that drives me crazy is that you have a little house in the city that it's a 1-family house and you rent it, okay?
Yep.
All right, so you rent it out and you tell the guy, okay, in the lease it says you're responsible for the lawn maintenance. You're responsible for your own snow removal.
Yep.
It's like it's your house.
What I really like, if you say, hey, you're responsible for your snow removal, then the first big snow comes, and it's like, oh, are you going to come here is a plow coming? No, man.
No
We
plow.
talked
You're
about
the
this,
plow.
dude. Yeah. Get your shovel, bro.
But in the city, if you let your lawn grow, they'll give you a ticket.
Yep.
And I had a house once where I routinely would park on the lawn.
Yep.
It's my own house. I want to park on my own
Yeah,
lawn.
exactly. Why not? Why
And I got a
can't you?
ticket from the net office. And you can't park on your lawn. You can't.
You're gonna tell me what I could do.
If we were on our radio program, I would have my producer pull up these machine gun sound effects and explosion sound effects. I'd go nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nuts.
I don't understand why you can't do that. Park on your own lawn.
It's I don't know.
I can understand like, hey, not have like you're not pulling apart a car and you have all the car parts all over your lawn or something.
That's where it all starts, I think. Working on cars in the road and out in front of houses and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm sure like something happened, somebody got hurt, and then here we go. It just
the problem there with that deal was Mrs. Peabody Body Nosy who kept calling the net office saying, "Hey, you're parking in the front yard again."
Yeah.
Well, I think she just disappeared one day. No, and I didn't do it.
So there's always people like that. I've had that where like, oh, you can't do this, or you have I've actually been called about almost the exact same thing. About I had a tenant who parked his motorcycle on the lawn, and the people from across the street called in on that.
Right.
A motorcycle, really.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
There was an instance not too long ago that I get involved in some landlord-tenant stuff. Somebody will hire me to prove something one way and whatever. So I get over there, and it's a 30-unit apartment, old building.
Yep.
The people that own it, I know them, and they're good folks, and they run a nice, tight ship, good maintenance. I mean, they do it how I would like to see it done. And there's a fence between their parking lot and the house behind them. And this fence was an old fence. It was 25 years old. It was kind of in dispute who really owned the fence.
Yeah, it was kind of right on the line. You weren't sure which one it was.
But the people in the house said it was their fence.
I see.
So these folks had their parking lot repaved. And somehow the guy that owned the house said that the fence is now leaning over, that the paver guys ruined his fence. And, of course, the people that own the building said, no, that fence has been like that forever. So I go over there and I analyze it, take pictures, write a report and all that. Then they go to court, and, it's a horrible
He
situation.
said, she said. That's
Yeah, but the system is stacked against business people in the cities, period. I don't care what city it is. I know it is.
Well,
here
they're tenant friendly is often what it is. It's they're going to give
tenant friendly. This,
yeah,
as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
that is first of all.
I'm not saying I agree with it.
No,
I
I
don't
know.
like it any more than you do.
Perhaps I did go over the top with
Yeah.
that, but it is one of those things where business is always evil. As far as not getting into politics at all, but a lot of these cities are run by folks that believe that people should have everything handed to them,
And you don't earn it,
And,
and
I'm not on
Yeah.
that. I'm not on that plane. So, but these things, sometimes. It's a preconceived deal. You go to court even with good information, and you wind up losing.
Yeah,
So,
I can't even understand why they would even hire you about the fence thing. I'd almost say you hire a surveyor to figure out whose fence it actually is, because that alone even seems like it's in dispute.
What happened was they went to court and lost the first time. Then they appealed. And
Jeez.
when you go to appeal, the judge isn't really judging the case again. She's judging the judge and how the previous judge handled the case.
I see.
And this particular judge that they pulled downtown, I've been in front of her 10 times. She's insane.
Uh-huh.
But I have to give her credit. She will not let those people leave without solving this. And what happened was they at the bottom line of the fence was the folks that own the property agreed to replace the fence and then take ownership of it.
I see.
So, and the other guy doesn't have to worry about it. He gets a new fence to look at.
There
whatever.
you go. There
they
you go.
solved it. My folks had to pay money, obviously, for a fence, but there was no monetary award then.
Okay.
They sued him for $3,000 or so in small claims court. So it was, but that judge is No. Interesting. Let's put it that way.
We do have some interesting judges in Rochester.
There's an old guy that is a judge. He's way in his 80s. He's part-time. And it's downtown in the city. I mean, it's a real court, and, but he is wonderful. He listens to my radio show. So every time I go in there to testify for somebody, hey, Jim, how you doing? And, of course, the other side's looking over.
It's like, well,
that ain't right,
We want another judge, yeah.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. So, the bottom line with landlord-tenant relationships is building relationships. And you're
exactly.
You're a pretty easygoing guy.
That is the key, is building that relationship, is having that rapport. Because if they look at it as it's a transactional piece, I mean, they're not going to really care that much about actually taking care of your property. If they feel like, hey, I respect this person and I almost consider them my friend, but it's not like a friend, like, hey, buddy, whatever. It's like, hey, I actually I respect you and I understand you. They're not going to destroy your stuff. Most cases. They're going to have, if you have a good rapport, good relationship, and they respect you, it's going to be fine 90% of the time, I would say. You know
what happens, though, too? This is a business.
Yep.
Being a landlord's a business. And sometimes a landlord will become too close of a friend.
That's why I was trying to put that emphasis.
Going over and drinking with somebody or whatever.
You got to cross, it's almost like a professional relationship.
Horrible thing to let that happen.
I would say it's a professional relationship in many ways. It's like having a good relationship with your boss. I'd rather have a good relationship with my boss than a bad relationship. So I'd rather have a good relationship with my tenants, but not a bad one.
There you go.
And it's kind of like you mentioned right there. Like, I'm not going to go drinking beers with you and and all that noise, but I'd rather have there be mutual respect, because that's going to carry on in how they treat my property and the place they live.
And the very, very worst thing that you can do, say you're a single guy, you have properties, is to start a relationship with a single woman or a woman with kids living in one of your apartments.
Yeah, now it's
my God. Those are extremely explosive situations.
Oh boy, yeah, you're getting everything.
Where's your rent?
It's like, I got to put my landlord hat on.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
And you know what? If you get yourself in that situation, I mean, you deserve what you get. You're gonna, had it coming.
It's like owning a bar.
Yeah.
You don't drink in your own bar.
Yeah, exactly. If you like to drink a lot, you probably shouldn't own a bar to begin with.
Good advice.
That's how I see it.
Well, buddy, we've reached the end of this wonderful houseatwork.com home repair clinic podcast. And hope everybody enjoyed that. Peter's going to give you the email address. If you'd like to weigh in, you're more than welcome to send us an email with suggestions for topics or a particular specific question about something. You're more than welcome to do that.
Yeah, go ahead and email us at contactus@houseatwork.com.
And thanks for listening. We'll see you again down the road for the next House at Work Home Repair Clinic podcast.